set, Zendikar Rising, is not out on paper for another weekend. Looks like the standard format might already be solved.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even just call it solved. It's like bordering on broken. Like it's, like solved, it's like sometimes Jund solves the format. It's not like the Jund deck's broken, but it turns out it's the best deck. Or Fairies solved the format or whatever. I think the Omnath deck is broken in the context of Standard.
So I think that the Omnath deck is meaningfully different from the Jund and Fairies solutions, right? Like Jund and Fairies,
extremely. It's not a solution. This is just a busted deck,
widely played and had really, really widely played, and then slightly under a 50% win rate. It seems to me like this Omnath deck is both above average win rate and widely played.
It's grossly over both.
Yeah, so...
And it overperforms at every bracket, like in Swiss, and then into the top 8, and then disproportionately winning.
And it doesn't
Plus, everybody knows about it, but it doesn't matter. What are you going to do?
It doesn't seem to me like there are really tools to play other decks than the Omnath deck really right now.
Well, it's very difficult. I think it might be busted in lots of formats. We've already seen Omnath just immediately become a fixture in Pioneer, Historic, Modern. It hasn't really put up finishes in Legacy yet, but I think it's going to be really good in Legacy.
Legacy is a home to many a fetch land, and not for nothing, that format has plenty of explorers if you want to go that direction.
Oh yeah, plus, dude, I still think there might be chances of fast bond in Vintage. You fast bond with Omnath?
Wow. Fast bond with Omnath is filthy. You get the Omnath and play with a fast bond in play, you just draw some cards, rebuy your mana, blast your opponent's face, which is just literally what the card does. Those are its abilities.
You can pitch it to Force a Will. How sick is that?
All right, so let's talk about this card for a second and then talk about the context of this card. So Omnath, Locus of Creation is a 4/4 creature for 4 mana, legendary creature elemental, but they balanced it, right? So they gave it a casting cost of RGWU. So it's difficult to cast, right? 4 different colors.
Difficult with air quotes, but yeah.
Yeah, the trick is it's not difficult at all.
That's not just the trick. The trick is that it's not even in the zip code of costed correctly. Okay, let's walk through this for a second. So 4/4 for 4. Well, not a bad rate. Not in the realm of good enough, right?
But not these days, no.
No. Certainly not at that cost. 4/4 draw a card. Boom. Already, we're somewhere. 4/4 draw a card, and it even has good types. But 4/4 draw a card, we're already having the conversation.
Yeah, right? I want to keep reading the extra paragraph after this.
Yeah. Well, and 4/4 draw a card could show up. That's just a card people would play. But there's more. If you play a land, you just gain 4 life. So you just have a cantrip Luxodon Hierarch.
Yeah.
Except instead of just being a cantrip Luxodon Hierarch, you can gain 4 more life next turn. So it's already much better than Luxodon Hierarch.
It's like a Beast's deck. Remember when Ravenous Baloth kind of led the charge of the Beast's decks? But you don't have to sacrifice any beasts. You just got to play land.
It's like Luxodon Hierarch just has Spirit Link, So there's more though. The real money, even though the card is already absurdly good. I think if you just look at the first landfall ability, you're already talking about Siege Rhino. Compare it to Siege Rhino. Instead of you gaining 3, you gain 4. Instead of them losing 3, you drew a card. And then instead of having a 4/5 Trampler, you have a 4/4 that has the ability to gain 4 life next turn. Right? So they're at least in the same ballpark, right? But if you combine it with a fetch land, like a Fabled Passage or an Evolving Wild, it's like you get a blacker Lotus.
This is what I don't understand. Mana. Whose idea was this to give it the ability to make Omnath mana for free a second time? It is just nothing. Like,
so I think the problem is they costed it like they cost. So it's not the first one of these. They've been making some of these 4-color cards for like Commander and putting them in some of the weird products that are just not legal and standard. But I think they like forgot that that's not the real curve you balance things on. And so it's just one of those fake Commander cards that would immediately be good in Vintage or Legacy or whatever, but it's just in the set. You know, and the Blacker Lotus part is the part where it's just already like, okay, well, I guess this card's just going to be banned in half the formats. You can't just add Blacker Lotus to a card that's already like at the tippity top. Like Siege Rhino is very good. Siege Rhino is very, very good. You can't just add Blacker Lotus to Siege Rhino.
But it's not done. There's still more abilities.
You're already at 0 mana cantrip Luxodon Hierarch, and then you also have the parlay of the admittedly not as relevant, but still quite good ability of deal 4 damage to the enemy player and all their planeswalkers.
That's so powerful.
Yeah, it's completely messed up. And it's not like, oh, they made this Unreal card that to try to help keep cards like Uro in check. Uro's like the best card with it.
They're like best friends. It's not just that they're like best friends, because I think that the nudge, nudge, wink, wink on Omnath is, oh, we made it like Teamer plus white. It's so hard to cast. I mean, Uro is already 50% of the way there, and Genesis Ultimatum is already 75% of the way there. The parlay on the entire deck is 1 planes. 1 planes! Because the deck has got like 4 Fabled Passage, 2,
4 Lotus Cobra,
upwards of Evolving Wilds, 4 Lotus Cobra, and then like also the dual lands, right? Like there's like green-white dual lands or whatever you can play. And I mean, I think Lotus.
Most people don't even play them right now either.
It's unclear what the perfect build on the mana is, but right. They've got Cultivates, they've got Beanstalk Giants to get the 1
You can
planes.
play Gilded Goose if you wanted, but most of the time they don't even bother.
No, what do you think about the 1 planes? That's actually the worst card in the deck as far as I can tell, right? Like because you might be tempted to get it. And then that makes it so that it's hard for you to cast Genesis Ultimatum.
No. You should definitely. The planes is, rocks, You want to play planes. By playing planes, you get to not play a lot of other cards.
I buy it. I think that, like, the other problem, like you already mentioned Lotus Cobra, is the first Lotus Cobra makes it so easy to land Omnath on turn 3, right? Like,
but Lotus Cobra dies.
But that's the thing. The second Lotus Cobra still gets you Omnath ahead of schedule.
I know, and if you draw Lotus Cobra, you're in good shape. I'm telling you, you need the reliability of planes.
Oh, I'm not really that off of planes. I feel like if I played this deck, I would play a planes. I just think it's the worst card in the 60.
I don't know. I mean, maybe it's worse because I actually, through the metric that I kind of am imagining you describing, I know what you mean. It's the worst card to draw. And you don't want to do it, but it's really good. Like, if you're measuring best and versus worst in terms of what card would lower your win percentage the most to cut,
okay,
planes would be really high on the list.
So the thing is, like, I think there's two kind of scales I look at it. On one, if you're forced to search for planes early in order to cast Omnath, just to cast Omnath out of your hand,
if you're so fortunate as to have the Omnath to go get, everything is worth it. So, I'm telling you, the Plains is a tiny price to play for a 0 mana cantrip, Blacker Lotus that gains you 4 life. It's not close.
So usually when you're in that situation, it's because somebody like Spikefield hazarded your Lotus Cobra or whatever, and you
just didn't draw it.
Or you didn't draw it, right? But that a 4/4 body in play that gains 4 life immediately is probably really valuable, like you're under creature pressure, in which case that card becomes the ace, right? I think that when the planes is disadvantageous is when it's not the ace, and that you actually need to go to like Escape to the Wilds or Genesis Ultimatum because you're playing against another ramp deck, and Omnath isn't that powerful in that situation.
I think you might be. You know what I bet the part is? I bet you might not be factoring in how weird mana is now, because it's not like you just get stuck with the planes, right? Like, how many land are you imagining playing?
Like in my deck?
Yeah, in your deck. How many land are you playing in your deck?
Upwards of 27, 28 before you start counting cards like Spikefield Hazard.
Right, like, I think you're supposed to play at least 30, possibly a lot more. Like, you get to count, and this is counting stuff like Spikefield Hazard, but you can play so many super power, like, it's not like you're like, oh man, I have no other land to play. Like, just play one of your million other lands. You know?
Yeah.
You're going to eventually do something with the planes anyway. It's not like drawing the planes is worse than drawing an extra Genesis Ultimatum or something.
The only reason that I'm down on the planes versus other lands that you might have had to play is that planes is one of the only lands in the deck that doesn't cast Genesis Ultimatum.
Yeah. I think you're going to be surprised. I know the experience of like, oh, it's the worst when you're playing a Cruel Ultimatum deck and you draw the plains or the forest.
Yeah.
This is not that. The Cruel Ultimatum decks did not have Lotus Cobra and Omnath and Escape to the Wilds. Like, you're just in a very, very, very different functionality. Plus, you can just play your cards as land for no reason.
Yeah, so the other nudge, wink, wink with this deck is if you're fortunate enough to untap with like a Lotus Cobra and an Omnath and play, like you get to untap your next turn, you'll often just play your entire deck that turn, right? You just play a land or something, it's a fetch land, you cast Genesis Ultimatum, get a ton of triggers off of both Omnath and Lotus Cobra. If you're really lucky, you flip over an Omnath, replace the previous Omnath so that you can get further landfall triggers, right? And then you're just chaining Omnath into Omnath. Doesn't even matter that you've replaced a non-summoning sick Omnath with a now summoning sick Omnath, because eventually you just ultimatum until you hit Kenrith, who gives everybody haste anyway, with your infinite excess mana. The deck is silly, because you're like ultimatuming Lotus Cobras and Omnaths into play, which are just along with lands. So you're generating so many triggers.
You realize that it's gotten to the point where they play with not only one Kenrith, but like everybody plays with one Terror of the Peaks, so that you can just 20 somebody without having to go to an attack phase.
Yeah, so some of those things are kind of like life on auto, right? If you're playing like Felidar, Felidar Sanctuary?
Yeah.
Or Felidar Retreat, rather. Yeah, you just like made a bunch of guys, they get haste. You don't really need that stuff, right? Like, it's cool. There's another way to win. But like, Terror of the Peaks, Kenrith, I mean, if you can't win with the amount of infinite mana that you're getting and the amount of extra cards you're drawing, because at some point you have so much excess mana from the Lotus Cobra and Omnath triggers, you just like buy back Uro and stuff also, right? So
you can do whatever you want. You're just making tons of mana, drawing tons of cards. Shockingly, a 0 mana cantrip with 16 abilities is potentially abusive. Notably, a lot of people are playing pathways that can be played for white some of the time.
Yeah.
So it's not like planes is like the problem here, Like, you really do want to. But anyway, the thing I think is interesting is that we've already seen some excellent showings by the Seagate Restoration. Like, you were asking last week about, or the other day about Seagate Restoration, but like already Seagate Restoration and Turn Timber Symbiosis have done real good work. I mean, heck, people are playing Seagate Restoration in their adventure decks, not even just the Omnath decks. Like, did you see Hiro Sukai's 8th place list from the Standard Challenge? So it's like a Teamer Adventure deck, just like you would expect. But, there's this interesting, there's 2 Ugin the Spirit Dragons. That's fine. You go big sometimes, I guess. That's your thing. And then you look at the mana and you're like, there's only 17 dedicated land. But that's because there's 21, 25 dedicated land. But there's also these Seagate Restorations and Turn Timber Symbiosis. Dude, Seagate Restoration, man. So good with Escape to the Wilds.
Yeah. I thought it was crazy back in the day when people were playing the 3 Escape to the Wilds and Teamer Adventures. I'm like, that seems like such a win more card in the Adventures deck. And it's gotten such an identity from the Adventures deck, and then now it's played as an extensive 4 in the Omnath decks. I never thought I'd see a day when Teamer Adventures like the second best Escape to the Wilds deck, right? At escaping to the wilds. But you're right. Once you've escaped to the wilds once or twice, Seagate Restoration, it gets eminently playable, right? It gets it doesn't take very much for it to be playable in the first place. I mean, playable like you can feasibly cast it.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
And obviously, like if you Beanstalk Giant, you frontside the Followed Footsteps, or Fertile Footsteps rather, with Lucky Clover in play, you're much of the way there already, right? You can just get Double Island or something, and you're rocking and rolling.
So there was actually a different 4-color deck. Phil Hellmuth finishing 9th. It's instead of Omnath colors, there's black instead of red. Why, you might ask? Well, so to start with, this deck has an absurd amount of land because of how much its land are able to function as spells. But for creatures, you've got Uro, of course, and 4 copies of Waker of Waves, a man after your own heart.
Yeah, I mean, Waker of Waves is just like cycling, right?
That's the 5 blue, 7/7. Creatures your opponents control have -1, -0, and you can pay 1 in a blue and discard it to look at the top 2 cards, put 1 in your hand and the other in your graveyard. You were singing this card's praises, saying its day was going to come. Well, here we are.
Very subtly, Waker of Waves also gives you fuel for Uro.
Oh, yeah. Plus, at the end of the day, this deck looks like it's almost exclusively interaction, and then just trying to leverage the getting an advantage from Elspeth, Shark Typhoon, and Uro, and just trying to find them more and more.
Well, I think it's obvious that if you just use Waker of Waves in the first 4 turns, right, to hit your land drops, etc., then you just cast Elspeth Conquers Death, then you've essentially made a 5 casting cost 8/8 Waker of Waves, right? It's just on a delayed blast, right? That's kind of part of what's going on here, I think, right? Because there's not other really good things that you can get with Elspeth Conquers Death.
Oh, that's true. You're kind of doing it like a reanimator thing.
Yeah, I think that's the whole thing,
cool.
Right? So Phil Hellmuth's deck is all about, I think, using cards like Waker of Waves to kind of get towards the expense, and in a sense, Uro itself is like a 3 casting cost cycling card that also accelerates your mana and defends your life total. So just kind of gets you forward to that 5 spot where you're disrupting your opponent's mana and just negating them and neutralizing them and destroying their creatures along the way. At which point you've got Captain 8/8, who's also a Stronghold Taskmaster or whatever.
Well, the other thing is that you need to have at least a few cards to blink with Yorion. It's not like Uro's the best Yorion hit ever. What's interesting is this deck has almost none. You've got Elspeth Conquers Death. You've got 4 copies of your favorite card, Confounding Conundrum.
Love it.
I had a feeling you would. But that's it. There's literally nothing else. Isn't this just the weakest, the deck that uses Yorion the least?
Yeah, well, Phil Hellmuth has the opportunity to play 80 cards.
You know?
I was actually really interested. Like, this deck has a ton of land, right? Like, arguably it has like 45 land.
No,
right?
No. It's only got like Bloodchief's Thirst. If you're looking at the Wizards site,
oh yeah, so
they haven't updated it with the new cards. So, but it does have 41, which is or not 41. I guess it's got 40, which is quite a lot. But
no fields. That's the thing I was really surprised about. It's like this is like a pretty good field deck, I think.
I guess. I don't know. This is kind of just I don't know. I don't know completely what's going on here anyway. I'm trying to follow.
I think it's reanimates Waker of Waves.
Dude, is this Solar Flare?
Excuse me?
Is this Solar Flare?
It's Solar Flare. This is
awesome.
It's exactly what it is.
So before we actually go too far from the Omnath deck, didn't want to completely gloss over it. I did want to ask you what you thought of a couple things. First of all, Spikefield Hazard. Just a solid card, right?
I think it is solidly the best modal double-faced card. Better than the Mythics, as far as I can tell.
What?
Widely played in a variety of decks, and it's there to kill Lotus Cobras.
Yeah.
It's very good at killing Lotus Cobra.
Yeah.
And it's pretty good at being a land. Like, even the mono-red beatdown decks are playing it.
Yeah.
Like, the second
definitely.
from this event, Kataban, who finished second, has a couple of Spikefield Hazards in the main deck. And two additional
more
Spikefield in the sideboard. Yeah, like, this is just the card you play now. I totally get it. Makes sense to me, because Lotus Cobra is public enemy number 1.
The other thing I wanted to ask about is this trend of playing lots of bombs in the sideboard. And different people play different bombs, but like Ugin, Elder Gargaroth, like how much do you think, like how much is that, some people are playing Bone Crusher Giant, some people, like just a lot more threats. What do you think of that general plan?
So
Craig Plate, Baloth.
Like if you look at Tesla Cow's deck, Tesla Cow finished first in this particular standard challenge. They had 4 Elder Gargaroth, 4 Ugin the Spirit Dragon in the sideboard, right? Like, those cards are very different than the kinds of threats that they play in the main deck. Just for an easy example, you can't Aether Gust an Ugin the Spirit Dragon, right? So maybe that's a card that you bring in where you think that you could get a lot of mana, but you might be up against an Aether Gust. Separately, it depends on, like, if you're playing against a beatdown deck, for example. This deck has 2 Beanstalk Giant and 4 Uro over the Lotus Cobras and Rada and so forth. So it's actually pretty natural for it to be able to play a 4th turn Elder Gargaroth, even if the opponent had a Spikefield Hazard for their Lotus Cobra. And I think that they're just leaning really hard into, look, I have 6 3s that can help me get to this on turn 4.
Part of it is also just the fact that Elder Gargaroth is just so amazing against the mono-red decks. One of the things we've been seeing is that aside from Uro decks, there's really very, very little of anything else. Like, there's mono-red, but that's because mono-red ostensibly has a good game 1 matchup against the Omnath deck.
Yeah, I don't even really buy it. I watched a lot of Omnath versus Mono Red. I made one of my apprentices load up the Omnath deck and watch some play on Magic Arena, and I feel like the Mono Red deck wins largely when the Omnath deck makes a misplay, not even when they stumble. So, like, there's too many great life gain cards. There's like 4 Uro, 4 Omnath in all of these decks. And like in this case, like if you look at Tesla Cow's build, there's Fire Prophecy, Spikefield Hazard. There's pretty good cards for slowing the opponent down, even if they kill your
it's easy when when the only matchups are Adventures, Mono Red, and the Mirror.
Yeah. Other ramp decks are like not even good enough, right? Like if you look at the Sultai ramp deck, I think that finished Daniel Akos, who finished 3rd. Like I look at this deck and I'm like, all right, Agonizing Remorse, Eliminate, Heartless Act, Blood Chief's Thirst, Hagra Mauling. These are all really good one-for-one interaction cards. One-for-one interaction cards are terrible if the default threats are Lotus Cobra and Omnath.
And Uro.
Horrendous. And Uro, right? Like,
right.
You're like, oh, wow, I got an efficient one-for-one. You already drew a card. Right?
So here's the question. Since they've kind of already tipped their hand that there's going to be a change to the ban and restricted list on Monday, and they didn't want to interfere with this weekend's tournament, do you think they're going to ban just Uro or anything else?
I actually thought they were going to ban Omnath.
You think the format was like in a really healthy place and it was just Omnath's problem? Like, hasn't Uro been literally the problem ever since it came out?
Okay, Uro was the best remaining card in Standard before Zendikar Rising came. That's the way I would describe it.
But there was never a time where Uro wasn't a problem.
But the best deck in Standard wasn't even an Uro deck right before the rotation. Blue-Red Tempo seemed to me like the best deck. You know, the Sprite
Not
Dragon
objectively.
deck?
It might be the best metagame deck, but
it
it's
was
not like
winning
it was
a lot
powerful.
of tournaments. Right?
Yeah, it was good. It was a good metagame deck.
First place. Right? So that's I read it as, and there were multiple variations. Obviously, you can't play some of them because they were based on Drakes or whatever now. But like, I felt like the best deck wasn't an Uro deck. I did feel like Uro was the best card. I'm not saying don't ban Uro. The card is very not fun to play against if you're not the Uro player. But I think that Omnath is... Like, Omnath speaks to me of, we did not develop this card very well. Right? Like, it's... I mean, maybe Uro also was not developed very well. But, like none of the restrictions on Omnath make any sense. And it has way too many abilities.
They do make sense if you just sort of imagine that you were designing a set that just plays by different rules, and True Name Nemesis is just like an acceptable card. Right? Like, Omnath... It's not like Omnath is that much better than True Name Nemesis.
I mean, but True Name Nemesis was never designed to be played in Standard.
Yeah, I know. Okay, look. Okay, Stoneforge Mystic is very good. It's not like Omnath is that much... It's like, you know, it's better than Stoneforge Mystic, but it's not like it's that much better.
I mean...
Look, I think we're saying the same thing.
You're just naming banned cards.
Yeah, they're going to ban this one too. Like, don't get it twisted.
Even why is the bar banned cards?
Because they're going to ban it.
Like,
dude, I don't know. I have no idea what they're doing. It looks crazy. All I can assume is that sometimes a big ship turns slowly and not on a dime. You know?
I think this is one of those times where they're like, maybe even though the cards haven't seen paper play yet. I mean, what is paper play these days, right? We should ban this because it's ruining everybody's experience.
There is 0% chance that Omnath isn't going to be banned in Standard before paper tournaments are a thing. Like a big thing, you know? So whatever, rip the Band-Aid off. Who cares? It's not like Omnath isn't legal. It's going to get banned in several other formats too.
Like, I was just looking at the just legacy results last week, and I just saw this deck. I'm like, oh, I own all these cards. I think I'll make this deck. And I was just like, this is just the most unremarkable 5-0 deck I've ever seen. Oh, yeah, I guess it just relies on the fact that there are 4 Okos. Right? Like, here's just like a bunch of blue and green cards that are pretty good. Like, oh, Oko brings it all together, though. Like, it's like one of those. Like, it's so obviously... It's like... The problem with Oko... Well, there were many problems with Oko. But one of the main problems with Oko was it just completely invalidated attack-based strategies. Right? Like, okay, if you played a good creature, they would just turn it into an elk. And if you played a creature that wasn't that good, they would just outclass it with their food and 3/3 production. Right? Like, Omnath is like that, except for it doesn't require Planeswalker ability usage. You could just play some lands, and if you have the ability to play extra lands, and they went to the trouble of printing additional explosive vegetations this set if you wanted to use them. Right? Like, you're just exploding with triggers on Omnath. Like,
all right, so
too good.
Of course. Let's take a look at some of the more powerful formats and see how busted it gets. What do you think of Omnath and Pioneer? There's 3 of the best decks right now are all Omnath decks. You can play Omnath in your Bring to Light Niv Mizzet Reborn deck. Now, obviously, Niv Mizzet Reborn doesn't go get Omnath. However, once you go to the trouble of being able to play Omnath, you're already basically there for Niv Mizzet anyway, and you can just play with a bunch of gold cards. And besides, Bring to Light to go find Omnath? Yeah, plus, how sick is the curve of Omnath, drop Fabled Passage, and then just immediately cast Bring to Light?
Oh my gosh.
You just go get the swamp in your Tron.
That's just absurd.
Right? Isn't that crazy? And then you Bring to Light and go get your Niv Mizzet?
The deck that Claudio played to third place in the Pioneer Challenge from a few days ago. There's like...
It's pretty representative. There's actually a lot of people who are playing... This is like, I think, the most popular way to play it right now.
Look, I feel like, even though there's only 2 Omnath, I feel like Omnath is more the centerpiece creature than Niv Mizzet in this deck.
It's still Niv Mizzet. It's just that... Because your whole deck is built around Niv Mizzet. But Omnath asks nothing of you and gives you so much. Niv Mizzet gives you a boatload, but that's because you're literally dedicating your entire deck to it. Like, if you just look at this deck, it's like, oh, there's 1 D-Spark, 1 Growth Spiral, 1 Utter End, 1 Slaughter Game. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Why? So anyway, yeah, Omnath asks nothing of you and gives you so much. I think you should play more than 2 anyway, for what it's worth.
Yeah, I just look at this and I'm like, all right, this deck has got 4 copies of Teferi Time Raveler. It's just such a meaningless 3-4 chain to go from Teferi to Omnath where they can't counter I mean, if counters were good, right, they can't counter Omnath and it's just there, and then you're just demolishing them with these
people do play counters in this format. They've got some decent ones. Like, I think, like, you know, a lot of people play the Lofty Denial or Spell Queller, but it's not like, you know, the best positioned. But there's also some control decks, Dovin's Veto. But the
but Dovin's Veto doesn't even counter any of those cards.
No, you're just trying to counter the Teferi. But the version that, speaking of Teferi, the version that instead of being a Bring to Light deck is just, man, I don't even know what you call this. I guess it's a Wilderness Reclamation deck. But like the 16th place list that Termidor played is a Wilderness Reclamation, Growth Spiral, Shark Typhoon, Expansion Explosion, Uro deck. And you're like, okay, yeah, I get it. And then it splashes white for Teferi. It's got a couple Azorius Charms also, but it's like, you're like, okay, yeah, some people play, you know, splash white, you know, for Teferi in their Teamer deck. But you just get Omnath also. So you're just an Omnath deck. It's just that your deck is full of... You're an Omnath deck that just has Growth Spiral, Wilderness Reclamation, Teferi, Uro. It's just all the ban cards.
Yeah. It's funny because this deck is just like doesn't seem to have that cohesive of a game plan. It's like It's like, all right, Wilderness Reclamation, that card was overpowered. Teferi was overpowered. Omnath, look, I guess it has Expansion Explosion. Right, like so.
Yeah, and Shark Typhoon.
Yeah, those cards kind of go together with Wilderness Reclamation, I guess. It's just like the band card brigade. I mean, dude. I love it. That's a great way to build a deck, apparently.
Yeah, just I guess we'll just overpower people. I bet you're not doing anything as good as Omnath.
Well, there's extra Omnath and extra Shark Typhoon in the sideboard.
I would play more Omnath personally. But
Termidor did. They were just in the sideboard.
Yeah, and but wait, there's more. So what do you think of Omnath in like you can actually Omnath out as like a pure ramp deck, right? Like you don't have to be a Niv Mizzet Reborn deck.
No.
Right? Like for instance, if you're just playing, I don't know. What do you think is the best example? But I mean, if you're just trying to go big, Omnath just fits into the style of ramp where you're just trying to overpower people.
But what if Omnath is just also the best mid-range card? Like that's the thing that I think is kind of unexplored right now.
Why? No. See, I think that the Bring to Light deck is the mid-range deck.
That's crazy to me that's not the powerhouse deck.
Right. Like, so the bigger one is like, for instance, the one I would play if I were playing in a tournament, Thugnificent's 5-0 list from a couple days ago was playing. So it's Omnath, Yorion, Gross Spiral, Genesis Ultimatum, Escape to the Wilds, Uro, Lotus Cobra, Teferi, and then Arboreal Grazer. Arboreal Grazer is a nice one with Omnath, by the way. Can I just say?
Oh, I'm a big fan.
Oh yeah, and then 4 copies of Agent of Treachery.
Because you just need more band cards.
Yes, and then 4 copies of Seagate Restoration.
So this deck is cray. Like there's 4 copies of the 7 drops in this deck. I guess
only 12 of them. 2 Turn Timber Symbiosis, and what I love is that it's Turn Timber Symbiosis speculative. Sometimes you just go get 5/4 Lotus Cobras. Because, like, if you don't hit Uro, it's not like Uro's great, right? If you don't hit Agent of Treachery or Omnath, what are you even doing?
I think you just play it as a land. I mean, like, what's the downside? It's also a lot of mana. Look, if you miss, like this isn't exactly a great when you play Turn Timber Symbiosis in a Gruul beatdown deck, you have a pretty good rate of return. You're probably not getting the best thing that you could be getting for that amount of mana because you're a Gruul beatdown deck, but you're going to flip something over and it's going to have some counters on it, right? I think this deck, I don't know. I'd have to be back against the wall to want to go that direction.
Eldar Retreat, pretty nice.
Yeah, there's just a lot of them. This is a Pioneer deck, huh?
Oh yeah, part of it is that you're just trying to blink your Agent of Treachery, and I think that part of what's going on here with Turn Timber Symbiosis is the Agent of Treachery wins the semi-mirror. If you can get out Agent of Treachery and start getting ahead of them on mana, then you blink it with your Yorion and you win. That's the theory anyway. I think in reality, you should just be focused on getting Omnath earlier and more often.
So do you think an 80-card deck is a bad way to go in general?
I don't know. It depends. It's too hard to say because there's just so many good cards that work with Omnath. I would personally be interested in seeing but it cuts both ways. I want to get Omnath earlier and often, but part of the thing that's so nice about Yorion is that when you just always have 1 million mana, it's so nice to just have an extra legit threat to go get.
I mean, just the extra mana that you get from Lotus Cobra or Omnath can just pay for the Yorion companion tax. That's like, you're just like, oh, I have just some stray mana. Here's 3. Like, I think that's probably a pretty subtle, awesome thing that this deck can do. The more I think about it, I'm not a huge fan of this being an 80-card deck. In part because it makes Turn Timber Symbiosis so much worse. It's already not good in this deck.
Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot of things to experiment with in what brief time you can actually still play with these cards.
So,
but what do you think?
Prediction on Monday in Standard, for sure Uro's dead, right? For sure.
It seems ludicrous to me that they would not ban Uro. If they're going to ban anything, it blows my mind to imagine that they would not ban Uro. At least Uro. I would personally recommend banning Omnath also, but if you want to wait and let the next week be, guess what? It turns out the Omnath deck is still the prohibitive dominant deck. Because I think if you literally just ban Uro or Omnath, you're still going to... I mean, if you don't ban Omnath, if you ban just Uro, it's going to be the best deck still. And I think that if you ban Omnath, it's probably going to be the best deck. It's going to be 3 of the 5 best decks.
So this is why I think they have to ban Omnath. I mean, like, when I say have to ban Omnath, I just don't think they're going to ban Omnath based on what you said. But I think that they have to.
I think they're going to. I think that the only question is, are they going to ban it this
week or next week? So,
I think that they might wait 2 weeks even. I don't think that Omnath is making it to Halloween. But I would just rip the Band-Aid off and not lie to, you know what I mean? Like, this card is not in the zip code of playable or making the format playable, but whatever.
This is why I think they have to ban it, right?
Yeah.
If you look at these decks, most of them have 4 Uro. Some of them have 3, right? Some of them have 4 Cultivate. Some of them have fewer Cultivate. But nobody is maxed out on Cultivate and like another like kind of like 3 casting cost Land Surge card. So like a lot of them have like 2 2 Adventure Giants, right? Some people have like 2 Caryatids. Some people, I think that Tangled Florahedron just seems better than a Caryatid to me. But like nobody has everything. If you just cut Uro, they just replace that 3 or 4 slots with some other card that's a functional, like,
I know,
get another land into play. And this time we actually just get the planes.
I think you talked me into it. I think you talked me into it. I think that it's weird to think that they wouldn't ban Omnath. The reason I think that it's just there's such a good chance that they would ban Uro is that Uro has been so warping from day one and will continue to be warping when they ban Omnath. You know what? Maybe I would love it if they just ban them both and keep it moving. It's not like Uro's not, you know.
It sounds to me like my head was ban Omnath and your head was ban Uro. After this conversation,
no.
I think ban them both. You just got to ban them both.
My head was ban them both.
Oh, okay.
I just think that they have to ban Uro also. The only question is, were they going to be like, hey, let's just see what happens. Is there any chance, like if we know we're going to ban Uro anyway, is there any chance that we can let Omnath have a little bit of time? I don't think so. I think it's so busted. If anything, maybe you just ban Omnath and you go, let's just see if somehow. No, you're going to be wrong. Uro. It's going to be okay. It's going to be Uro. It's going to be Uro. So yeah, I don't know. I hate predicting people will do the right thing.
So,
but yeah, my prediction is ban Uro and Omnath.
The reason my head was where it was at is I think my imagination is just like Uro is like poverty. It's this thing that everyone knows stinks and like everyone agrees is a problem, but has been with humanity for as long as there's been material wealth.
No, but they keep banning cards. It gets better and better.
Yeah.
People's bar just gets higher. It is like wealth. It's just eventually it's going to be the next part to go, you know?
You agree that if you're going to play 2 copies, 2 Tangled Florahedron is better than 2 Caryatids, though, right?
No, I don't know that. Dude, it dies.
Caryatids doesn't live very long.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I sure like being able to just have backup land.
Yeah, I mean, like, they're both 1/1s, right, for 2?
Yeah.
I feel like just being a land sometimes is better than... I mean, I guess Caryatid has a higher high end when you have certain creatures in play, but it's not that good for when you're just trying to accelerate to turn 3.
So if we continue our progression up, so in Modern, there's a couple different ways that it looks really good. The first way that people have done is just kind of as a good stuff card. It's just more of the play with cards that have come out in the last couple of years. Kind of a ramp deck, I guess. The other way is as a dedicated elemental deck. That one hasn't put up finishes, but I don't see why it wouldn't, given that Elementals was always putting up finishes, and Omnath is an elemental, and Omnath is so good with the with the Harbinger and the Smoke Raider.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know?
That's nice.
So good, right? Dude, you can even go get the guy, the 5-color elemental guy if you want, and get backs. I don't know, man.
You're pretty close to being there on that guy already.
Yeah. But which of those styles do you think is going to have more legs? Like, which one of those is going to be the one that ends up getting Omnath banned in Modern?
I mean, it's got to be the mid-range one. Like, the Jundi one has got to, there's just too much support.
Yeah, I guess you can just play with cards that are good. It's not even Jundi, though. The version that's done the best so far, I think, is the it's kind of a control deck. I don't know. It's got Teferi, Time Raveler, Uro, Force of Negation, Cryptic Command, Growth Spiral, Manamorphose, Path to Exile, Omnath, and then a few miscellaneous interaction. And then it's a Field of the Dead deck is the other thing.
Oh, okay. That's no fun already. This is
right. But dude, your deck Ren and 6? You just get Ren and 6 with Omnath. Guess what? Ren and 6 works great with fetch lands.
I mean, like,
isn't this deck just a joke?
It's just like Omnath is like this extra thing that's not central to the strategy, but it just always works out. Right?
They don't even play Snapcaster Mage.
I mean,
why would you? I don't know. I might play Snapcaster Mage personally.
Modern used to have Bloodbraid Elf on the banned list. Okay, that's how I think about this. Okay, like Omnath and Bloodbraid Elf. Bloodbraid Elf was banned. Bloodbraid Elf is a very powerful card, but at a minimum, you have to build your deck with an acknowledgement that Bloodbraid Elf is in it. Not everything has to be Bloodbraid Elf friendly, right? But you just have to be like, all right, in the back of my head, I'm thinking about how good this is going to be with Bloodbraid Elf. Or I don't want to flip it over, right? Like, so I have some deck design considerations here. Omnath is like a Bloodbraid Elf that there's no such considerations, except for it's twice as big and also gains life.
I mean, I guess you have to play with fetch lands.
Oh yeah, what a tax! Right?
Dude,
like,
you know what I would try to do? I think I would Flores this up. I think actually this looks like a good format for literally just try to figure out how you can play with the most best cards. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just out of like Teferis and Ren and 6 and Uro and Growth Spiral, and how can you just fit the most cards that should all be banned in some format or another? You can probably build a deck that's like almost exclusively cards that would never be, that are just not okay in standard.
I mean, like with one fetch land, right? Like Uro is already just beyond Bloodbraid Elf, right? Right. So it draws a card. That's what Bloodbraid Elf does, and then just one fetch land, you get the mana back, right? And it's more mana than Bloodbraid Elf gave you. Bloodbraid Elf only gave you 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is
if you're lucky.
Oh yeah, sometimes you got like I sometimes get like a Noble Hierarch. That happened.
Seagate Restoration put up a finish from McWinsauce in their modern Omnath deck. You have to admit, I win on Seagate Restoration.
Oh,
right?
no. I'm completely wrong. That card is apparently great. It's all over the place already.
But dude. Okay, so clearly this is like a good thing. Oh, actually, we should mention, though, Cleansing Wildfire has immediately become a staple. What do you think about it? It's the new one. Destroy target land. Its controller may search the library for a basic land, put it in the battlefield tapped, and shuffle their library, draw a card. But it's only 2. It's just 1 in a red.
I think it's a great card. I think there's 3 key applications to this card. One of them is it's like a Stone Rain for cheaper. Obviously, they get to replace the land. But some decks don't have basic lands. Sometimes you can color screw someone. For sake of argument, if you cast that card against the 1 planes in an Omnath deck, that's difficult to replace, right? So you could strategically get somebody. You can disrupt them a little bit. In the case that somebody is playing a ramp deck and you have a Confounding Conundrum, there's
Tron.
Yes. Sure.
Wait, sorry. Keep going. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, but there's a lot of interplay there if you're going to play those kind of things. And I think that
I see. Confounding Conundrum. Yeah, that's clever.
Yeah. So the other cute thing you can do with it is to get your own land, right? So if you hit your own land, it replaces itself and you draw a card. It's kind of Harrow Light, but for only 2 mana. If you've got some kind of landfall stuff,
well, if you have Field of the Dead, you just get an extra zombie, man. Plus, you actually can you can cash in something you've got dupes of. Like you've got 2 Mystic Sanctuaries or something.
Sure. But in that case, it's just like a cycle, right? And you can actually tap the land that you're gonna nug with it, right? So it's even a little bit better than that. And you can get out of a legend thing maybe if you've got another one you want to play. But I do think that that's going to have a lot of application where you play it in like a red-green landfall aggro deck. So that sometimes they hit their own thing and then sometimes they use it for disruption. So, and then again, there's the confounded conundrum thing that you can do with it, which I think is cute. But this card seems to me very, very solid to play. I think it'll probably do better in a red-green aggro deck than it does elsewhere, but I think that lots of decks can play it.
Not surprisingly, Magmatic Channeler showing up in Modern in some Death Shadow decks. What do you think of that?
Well, that card's just, it's potentially super strong, right? Like, I mean, it is a little expensive for a Death Shadow deck, though.
2?
Yeah, you know, those guys like 1.
I don't know, man. It's a 4/4 with abilities. What do you think of Scourge of the Skyclaves? That one showed up. That's the one in a black star. It's the new Death Shadow, but its power and toughness are equal to 20 minus the highest life total among players. And then when you cast the spell, if you kick it for the 5 extra, so if you spend the 7 that you never do in Modern, you make each player lose half their life rounded up.
Well,
but
I mean,
this is an extra Death Shadow that for 2 mana is a 20 minus the highest life total.
So if everybody's at 20 and you cast it, it's just dead to start, right?
Right.
And then it gets progressively more dangerous the lower... Oh, it's like an assassin. The lower the life totals, the bigger it gets.
It's technically not an assassin, it's a demon. But yeah.
Like an assassin.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably pretty good in a deck where you're designed to damage yourself, right? You have a lot of control over its ability to get big. Yeah,
a lot of people are actually boarding more of it. Like, Humpa was playing the full 4 copies main deck, but some people were keeping some in the main, some in the sideboard.
It's probably going to be one of those cards that finds its balance, right? Like if this, maybe it's a breaker in the mirror match.
Other new hits showing up: Feed the Swarm, destroy target creature or enchantment an opponent controls. You lose life equal to that permanent's converted mana cost. Very on theme as a sideboard option for a Death Shadow deck.
This is a pretty different effect for black, right?
They've been slowly working black into getting some enchantment removal. They recently had that edict for a creature enchantment, and this is the first one where black is actually just like straight up targeting it, you know?
Yeah, but the edict costs 3, right? For Frika's
Libation. It wasn't very good. This card is actually pretty decent, and what's kind of interesting is that so Humpa's list is actually just Rakdos. It's just 2 colors. So having access to enchantment removal is really different. You know?
Yeah.
And then the other thing here is the amount of Agadeem's Awakening. What do you think of Agadeem's Awakening? Considering a deck like your deck just has Scourge of the Skyclaves as your only 2, and then you're just playing with Monastery Swift Spear, Soulscar Mage, Death Shadow. Like, this deck is actually going to frequently only do the Awakening for 1. But it's a land that does 3 damage to you, powering up your Death Shadow.
I mean, it's kind of everything that you might potentially want, right? Like, so when you play the land, it can act as a permanent giant growth, get your thing into play untapped. And the casting costs are very friendly with the Agadeem's Awakening. So, and I mean, like, the amount that you would ever pay it for on a maximum is not that much anyway.
Yeah, 4. Like I guess 5, because you could get your Lurrus into play from your sideboard.
That's good.
Yeah, Lurrus is a good get. Lurrus is great with all these cards, you know?
Yeah.
So what do you think, man? Any chance anything gets banned in any other format besides Standard?
Not this week.
The thing I think is so interesting about Omnath and Pioneer is that you don't get to play with the full-on fetch lands. You just have to be doing it with, like, Fabled Passage and Evolving Wild, you know?
That's okay.
And it's still, but it's so good, and I think it's going to be busted in the end. How long do you think it'll be before they ban Omnath in Pioneer?
Oh, it'll be a while.
You think so?
Yeah, there's not high-profile Pioneer tournaments.
Mm.
See, I think that's the thing. I think, like, if we were if it were like a year ago, right, and there was like a Pioneer Pro Tour coming up, there'd be a much different tenor to this. But nah, not if it's only on Magic the Gathering Online. Like that doesn't even get played on Arena.
So, what do you think of the historic? We kind of skipped over that one, but actually, PAX Online just had their MTG Arena Championship, and Richard Neal finished third with a 4-color Yorion Omnath deck in historic. Now, in historic, there's you play with basically you're playing with all the cards that are still legal from the modern deck. You know, it's got Seagate Restoration, Turn Timber Symbiosis, Genesis Ultimatum, Growth Spiral, but you gain Explore. You got Escape to the Wilds, Cultivate, Lotus Cobra Omnath, Uro, Kenrith, Arboreal Grazer, Yorion, but you also, and Felder Retreat, but you also pick up Craterhoof Behemoth as a top end, as an added dimension, as an extra way to get haste. But here's the interesting one. What do you think of Phylath World Sculptor? 4 red-green. It's the 5/5 legendary elemental. When Phylath World Sculptor enters the battlefield, create a 0/1 green plant creature token for each basic land you control. Landfall, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put 4 +1/+1 counters on target plant you control.
So, I mean, this deck is really exploiting triggers from Genesis Ultimatum, right? Like, you can put cards like Craterhoof Behemoth and Phylath World Sculptor into the battlefield. Lots of triggers are going to occur where you could be getting multiple plants, right? So, I don't know how many basic lands you often have in play when you're casting Genesis Ultimatum in this deck, but, if you're casting multiple Genesis Ultimatums.
It is a deck with 3 Cultivates to go along with all the Grazers, Uros, Explorers, Growth Spirals, and the full package of Evolving Wilds and Fable Passage.
Yeah, so like you're probably going to get a lot of stuff out. I think that landfall ability is really strong, right?
Well, what I'm wondering is why aren't we seeing this in Standard?
I think we're not seeing it as Standard just because maybe the set's too new.
See, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that maybe there's an opportunity here to transplant Phylath over, because one of the big things that's happening here is that Phylath is making it so that your Turn Timber Symbiosis hits more.
Yeah,
there's compare the Turn Timber Symbiosis in this deck compared to the one that we looked at earlier. You still have your 4 Omnath, right? But instead of 4 Agent of Treachery, I guess you're not even that far ahead. You got 3 Phylath and 2 Craterhoof Behemoth. So it's a little bit more, but...
Well, the one thing I was going to say is if you look at just the 60-card standard decks that have Omnath in them, they're not like... There's no hardened consensus on a single Omnath build yet. Like, there's kind of more red-greenish decks that have Rada in them. Maybe Phylath is really friendly with that build versus a build that's more white. I'm not sure.
Great point.
Yeah, so Rada is a pretty good plan C. In a deck that gets a lot of land into play.
Yeah, it's so messed up that card is relegated to plan C. Hopefully when they ban Uro and Omnath, that'll no longer be the case, but...
Yeah, I mean, there's some builds...
Dude, I haven't even been building Omnath decks, because it's just what's the point?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably going to be a deck that's Caryatid or the Fungal Guy and... Rada, Dryad of Illusion Groves.
How weird is that? Phylath World Sculptor is just an elemental who makes plants, no fungus. Appearances can be deceiving. Yeah. Or are you talking about the 2-drop?
The 2-drop.
Oh, sure, my bad.
Yeah, just to cast it, right? Eventually.
Gotcha.
Or you probably just get Dryad of Illusion Groves out faster first. But then Phylath World Sculptor is pretty fast to pick up after you've got Dryad of Illusion Groves, right? That's... All those guys are friends, right?
Yeah, definitely. Plus, it's not going to be banned.
Yeah, no one's banning that card. Just ban all the cards until Dryad of Illusion Groves is the best card in Standard.
Can we just ban all the cards from the last 2 years?
I mean, it's really weird to me that the prospect of a questing beast wearing an Embercleave is the good guys. Right? Isn't that that's a strange feeling?
How about this? Ban everything until Questing Beast is the best, and then ban Questing Beast and stop.
How much would you have to ban to get to Questing Beast is the best? Not that much. Questing Beast
I bet you have to ban 16 cards.
You have Questing Beast outside of the top 16.
No, I just think that it's not about what's the top right now. It's how many do you have to keep cutting off.
The world keeps shifting.
Right.
Okay.
Questing Beast is it's a very, very strong card that one can play with cards that are good against it. Whereas cards like Lotus Cobra, you can play with cards that are good against it, but there is this whole progression of degeneracy stuff where you knock one off and the next degenerate thing pops up. Like, what do you think the odds are that, let's just imagine that they ban Omnath and Uro on Monday. What do you think the odds are that they don't ban another card this year in Standard?
It is going to be October soon.
Next week it'll be...
I think that they could not ban another card. I think it's possible.
You think they'll go 3 months without banning a card in Standard if they ban those two?
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's exciting. It'd be interesting to find out, partly because I don't know what they would ban if you ban those two.
It just seems absurd to me. Like, second turn Lotus Cobra lives, untap, escapes to the wilds is a totally plausible play in Standard. Isn't that too good?
What, for Lotus Cobra?
Just like a third turn escape to the wilds, yeah.
No, because there's like a ton of removal that costs 1 or 2. It's like very easy to...
Yeah, people play lands that can remove a Lotus Cobra these days. I'm just saying, like, it just seems to me like that seems a little too explosive for Standard. Like, I want Standard to have some development.
Yeah, I don't think Lotus Cobra... I think Lotus Cobra is the right way. At least Lotus Cobra can be interacted with. It's not like Growth Spiral, you know?
That's a good point. I guess there's also like a lot of downsides. Like if you draw multiple Growth Spirals and you don't have a lot of other land, the Growth Spiral can at least help you draw into additional land. But like if you have a Lotus Cobra and no other land, like the Lotus Cobra is just terrible.
Yeah. I mean, it's a 2-1 that dies. So, all right, we're in the same predictions next week.
Yeah.
Probably Uro and Omnath, but if they don't ban Omnath, they'll ban it next week.
I mean, for sure, if it's just Uro, then there's not going to be another... There will be another ban in the year 2020. And it will be Omnath.
I don't even know what it would have to... Like, actually, as a quick experiment, how many cards would you ban to make it so that you don't have to ban Omnath?
I mean,
could you do it in 6 bans?
Yeah, you could easily render Omnath unplayable in 6 bans.
No, but like, are you talking just doing stuff like ban Evolving Wilds and Fable Passage?
Yeah, I mean, like, I'd ban Cultivate and Lotus Cobra to start.
Okay, well, so the problem, like, if you look at the cards, like, what could they even ban? Like, it's not like they need Fable Passage and Evolving Wilds for the Zendikar set to work, right?
Yeah, but you can ban... So, like, if Omnath is fair on speed, even if it's not, you know, like, it's way less of objectionable than if it's ahead on speed.
If they banned Lotus Cobra, Uro, Cultivate...
I think you have to ban Beanstalk Giant.
Beanstalk Giant.
Okay, it's absurd, but I think you have to be...
I don't know, dude. I think that if you ban 6 green cards, so you can't ban land, and not Omnath, I bet I can make a busted deck if you're just banning 6 green cards.
Like, the other thing is you could just get Omnath out without having to cast it, right? Like, that's... Like, what if you got out Omnath with Conqueror's Death?
Oh, good point. Is Omnath still broken if you ban Forest? I think so.
It's too good.
I think if you ban Forest, Omnath is way too good.
Like, imagine we went a completely different direction, right? And you were like, all right, I'm now an Omnath white-blue Omnath deck that just, like, incidentals out the other 2 colors to get Omnath. And my plan is now, like, Omnath... And I got out Omnath with, like, those color-switching eggs. right? Like that used to get played in Doom Foretold. Right, so I can cast Omnath with those. By the way, those cards have synergy with other cards I want to play. They have synergy with Yorion, right? So I get Omnath out, and then like I draw a card. I get like one trigger off Omnath. You kill it. I have Elspeth Conquers Death. Like, how is that a reasonable? Like, it's stupid. My deck's the stupid deck that I just made with a bunch of color switching eggs is probably better than half the decks in Standard. Right? Like, it's all cantrips, card drawing, color fixing, card advantage, and bombs. Like, it's just a green deck that doesn't have any green.
Well, I guess the cards are powerful. I'm excited to see how many cards in the set are playable next week. I feel like this is going to be one of those two cards banned, 57 cards added to the format.
Yeah. I mean, Gruul aggro is going to get real good in the second game.
In life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredge for jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Yukora trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to find a way not to lose my mind. Trapped in a vault with nothing but time. Parents and my friends were the key to find. Magic gave me purpose and drive. The game, the love, it kept me alive. Visions of better